lesson comes from Chapter 9, Section 6 in my student's textbook. And this section is about the quadratic formula. And in part 1 of the lesson, if you didn't see that, you can go back and watch that video. I introduced the quadratic formula and did some examples of how to use it to find the solutions to a quadratic equation. In this part 2, I'm going to introduce what's called the discriminant. And so as a quick review here, here's the quadratic formula. The discriminant is the piece that's under the square root sign. So the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. And the reason why we look at this and give it a special name is because you can use this to figure out how many solutions there are to your quadratic equation before you start. And that can be useful, especially if you're going to graph them. And so remember, a quadratic equation can have either one solution, two solutions, or no real number solutions. So 1, 2, or none. And the discriminant can help us figure that out before we start. Now, just also as a quick review, remember when you're graphing quadratic equations, the solutions are the x-intercepts. So think about that in terms of the number of solutions. So if your parabola crosses the x-axis in two locations, you have two solutions. If your vertex is on the x-axis, then you only have one solution. And if your parabola doesn't make contact with the x-axis at all, then there's no real number solutions. All right, so I'm going to show you some examples of how this works. So the value of the discriminant is going to tell us whether there's 1, 2, or none. So here we go. So here's the key. So this is the discriminant. If the discriminant is greater than 0, then that tells you there's two solutions. If the discriminant is equal to 0, that tells you that there's one solution. And if the discriminant is less than 0, meaning it's a negative number, then there are no solutions. So I have an example of each one of these. So we're going to check out what the value of the discriminant is, and then I'm going to show you a graph, and you can see why there's two solutions, one solution, and no solution. All right, so let's start with this first one here on the left. So again, here's how we calculate the discriminant. We're going to square b. So remember, this is your b value here, in this case, -6. Our a value is 1, and our c value is +7. So I'm going to do -6 squared minus 4 times the a value, which is 1, times the c value, which is 7. So all I did was plug in 1, -6, and 7 in for a, b, and c. So -6 squared is +36 minus 28. And so 36 minus 28 is 8. So in this case, the discriminant is greater than 0. That tells us that there's going to be solutions. So let me just get rid of this box here. This is the graph of that quadratic equation. And you can see that it makes contact with the x-axis in two locations. That's why there's two solutions. There's a solution here, and there's a solution there. So again, the whole point of the discriminant is just to let me know ahead of time, before I do any other work, how many solutions are there to this. So let's look at the other. And so this one is saying that if the discriminant is equal to 0, that tells you that there's one solution. So again, my a and b values, we left the same here. I just changed the c value. So same thing again, we've got b squared, so that's -6 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which in this case is 9. And so I get 36 minus 36, which is 0. That means that there is one solution. So if the discriminant is equal to 0, that tells you there's one solution. So let's look at the graph of that. So you can see it only makes contact at one place, x-axis, and that's right here, and that's actually at the vertex. So the vertex is on the x-axis. So again, the fact that the discriminant was equal to 0 lets me know that there's only one solution, which also tells me that the vertex is on the x-axis, which can be useful to know. All All right, so here's one last one. So here's my A value and my B value. Those didn't change. I just changed the C value to 11. So I have B squared, again, -6 squared, minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is 11. So I have 36 minus 44, which is -8. And again, if the discriminant is less than 0, meaning it's a negative number, then that means there's no solutions. So what does that look like on a graph? Move this out of the way for you. It looks like that. So you can see the parabola never makes contact with the x-axis. So that's why there's no solutions. All right, so hopefully this helps you to know how to use the discriminant to figure out how many solutions there are. Until next time.